Welcome to another edition of the Chuck and Ruck. I am your host, Ruck. To my left is the ever wise. This is Chuck. What's going on, brother? How you doing?
Yo, 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 what's up, my boy?
All right, nothing much, but man, it's been a crazy, hectic last few days. What's been going on? Um, a lot's been going on. Let's get this out the way real quick. Before we start, I feel like I need to get this off. I want to send a heartfelt condolences to the family and to the family of the late great Bill Russell. Rest in peace to the legend, to the great legend Bill Russell. I mean, there's not a lot to say to an individual who's done it all, who's fought for so much the way he has, and 11 championships in 13 years for what he has done. And like I said, who's fought for so much in his life for equality and tried to end racism and everything. Like he surely will be missed, but the brother definitely lived a long and fruitful life, and he definitely is a hero. So thoughts and prayers to the family of Bill Russell, and we lost a good one. We lost a good one. And
Oh yeah, absolutely. Bill Russell, he was one of the first minds when you think about the sport of basketball. One of the first people that come to mind. With the 11 championships. A feat that I think will never be topped. I don't see any player coming close to winning, winning at that high a level. There was an interesting question that came up, and I thought I would bring it to you. It just popped in my head, not to throw anything from left field, but I wonder how you feel. Um, you know how Jackie Robinson's number is retired in baseball. Someone brought up the suggestion of retiring the number six from professional basketball. How you feel about that, partner?
well, considering what Bill Russell has done in his career and what he has done and what he has meant, I could see something like that happen in the NBA world. I don't. It probably won't happen because a certain individual that's in LA right now is branded number six, so he might have some say in that regard. Um, but I could definitely see something like that happening, and it should. I think it should. He meant so, like I said, he meant so much to the game for what he had, for what he has brought, for what he has done, and he was just such an icon, and it will be well respected. And kudos to him, and give respect for the wonderful statement that Adam Silver what he has said in regards to him. So, mad respect to that regard. Um, I didn't want to not to disrespect Mr. Russell, but the main topic at hand here today is is talking about the news that finally dropped, in which we waited for almost 2 weeks that came out today. Which, yeah, the backlash for it has been pretty big. The biggest story that happened yesterday, Deshaun Watson. After 2 weeks of waiting, we finally got what he was given, and and I basically called it 6 games.
Yes, you
Deshaun Watson
did.
will be, yep, Deshaun Watson will be getting 6 games. Sue Robinson came out in her statement yesterday. Basically, was to make a long story short, she basically was saying that while his actions was egregious, um, it really was non-violent. It was non-violent sexual actions, which I'm not really sure how you could word that properly, but To make a long story short, her she felt as though it didn't warrant a full season, which the NFL wanted, but it was enough to basically just give him 6 games. And also prior to this, he has settled with 23 out of the 24. Chuck, your thoughts? Did he get enough? Did he think he shouldn't have got anything? Where do we
Um,
go here?
well, in this situation, I got I'm like most fans, I would say, it's kind of like having a double mind. First of all, being a Browns fan, you want to see him on the field as soon as possible, because he's an electrifying player, really spectacular to watch. And, he's a guy you just gotta be alert every play because he can do something to change the game, instantaneously. But, at the same time, me being a loving father of 5 children, 4 beautiful daughters, a husband, dedicated, loyal husband to my wife. Um, I think his acts were, uncalled for. And to be blunt, I don't think, from thinking from that perspective, like I said, as a man with women, young girls with a wife dealing with a family, I don't think 6 games is enough. But at the same time, me being a football fan, you want to see him out there, as soon as possible.
Yeah, unfortunately, as the Browns fan in you, you want him to go out there and to play. Uh, I'll be honest with you as well. I hate it. I honestly hate that we are a part of that we are involved in any of this whatsoever because this whole thing stinks. This whole thing is ugly, and it just gives us just an unfortunate bad name, and it gives individuals free reign to just attack innocent people, even like Sarah Spain from ESPN, for instance. There was a there was a video that emerged today during training camp practice today where fans surrounded Deshaun Watson and basically was just around him trying to get autographs from him. And she basically just made a comment how that made her absolutely sick. And I just went at her like, look, I get how you feel towards Watson, and you have every right in the world to feel the way that you feel. I'm not going to take that away from you. But how you that doesn't mean that you need to go and disrespect the fans in this regard. The fans didn't do nothing to you. Deshaun Watson was the one that did the crime, the alleged crime, not the fans. So regardless how you feel about Watson, that's your right and that's your beef. Like I said, I don't have nothing against it, but you have no right to disrespect the fans in this regard. You leave the fans alone, and you keep your opinions of the fans to yourself. Like leave the fans out of that. Leave the fans out of your animosity towards Deshaun. That's the stuff like this. In this regard, things like this brings out the ugliness in people, and like I said, I hate that we have to be a part of this situation because it's just because the worst just always just has to come out. Like the statement that Jimmy Haslam basically came out and basically said that Watson is this and that, and just supporting Watson is just like because people are just going to find ways just to attack and whatnot. I know I'm just feeling like I'm rambling, but there's really no proper way to just address it. But let me get back. Let me get back on the main topic here. I said from the get go that it was going to be 6 games because if you really look at everything here, it it really falls into play how the personal conduct policy actually fits. Like Deshaun Watson really, if yes, what he did was messed up and was wrong, but it really didn't go anything beyond what goes beyond the personal conduct policy. It only fits into the 6 games. And that's why I said he only needed to get 6. Um, and anybody that wants to get upset with it, people need to get upset with the NFL because the NFL created the policy from the get go. That's why I kept telling people today, like, well, why the what? How comes Calvin Ridley got a full suspension, got a full season, or Josh Gordon got over all these years for suspension for weed, and Martavius Bryant did for suspension of weed and everything? Well, and DeAndre Hopkins got all these for PEDs and stuff. And I had to break this down. Like, okay, first off, when it comes to Calvin Ridley got suspended a full season because what he did affected the integrity of the game. When you basically betted on games, and he sat here and decided to stop playing and sat out a season because he mentally checked out. And as soon as you did that, you allegedly started betting on your own team. Like, don't that sound suspect to you?
Yeah, absolutely. That whole
Exactly.
thing sound fishy.
That whole thing sounds incredibly suspect involving Calvin Ridley. So that right there is a red flag. Also, in regards to Josh Gordon and Martavius Bryant for the whole weed situation. Now, I'm not gonna lie. I'm not I'm not the guy that sit here who smokes weed or none of that stuff. I'm not that type of individual. But I can be an advocate who understands the way things are now today, that weed in certain states has become basically legal to use. So for them to basically not to for them basically to be out for so many games of it, and which weed is not really a drug, it's most like a herb. It's most like a herbal medication and everything. That's like an old school ruling and everything. Like the NFL should definitely consider changing some of their rules to basically not make them so insane, basically, if you catch what I'm saying. So that way this won't be prevented. Also, another thing, and Sue Robinson mentioned in her report, she mentioned the biggest thing, which was the owners, where how the owners had basically been running amok, which was led to why Watson basically only got 6 games as well. I mean, after all, when you basically have owners like Dan Snyder and the ship he basically been running with the Commanders, Jerry Jones, what he been doing, Robert Kraft. Oh, by the way, what Miami, what they basically did today, uh full blown going tampering, trying to get Tom Brady and Sean Payton, and look what that costed them today. Like, she basically said, you try to sit here and try to get this dude when yet you can't even control your own owners, basically. Like, you got your own problems to deal with. And make a long story short, I just feel as though like the NFL, the NFL basically has their own, like, the NFL messed themselves up with the whole ruling situation, and this was the penalty for it. Do I feel Deshaun Watson should have got more games than this? No, I think he got just about enough. I just wish we wasn't a part of this whole process. I kind of wish he was elsewhere when we had to deal with this headache. But if this all could be over with, best believe I will be. Best believe I definitely going to be rooting for this dude on the first game, Week 7 against Baltimore. Best believe I'm definitely going to be rooting for that guy, and hopefully this is all over with. Speaking of which, Chuck, Do you think the NFL is going to be appealing this?
Um, I think I from the way it looks now, I think the NFL will step in and try to increase the games. By how many, I'm not sure. You know, like you mentioned a little bit ago about Miami and their tampering situation, how the NFL came down pretty hard on them, you know, taking what the first and the third round pick and I believe
Mm-hmm.
finding them some money.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's kind of a move, like laying the groundwork, like, hey, we coming down on our owner. So, you know, don't feel, you know, any type of way when we step in with Deshaun. Like I could be totally wrong. The NFL, they might just want to wash their hands of it and you know, move past the situation. But I just feel that, you know, a lot of like on Twitter, like a lot of different women advocacy groups and you know rape crisis and stuff like that. A lot of these tweets been popping up about how these groups aren't happy and you know how they disappointed in the ruling. And you know, I just feel the NFL is going to take these next 2 days they got to make a decision. They're going to take time and you know really think about it. And I think ultimately they will try. You know, whether it be successful or not is a totally different story. You know, but I just feel that that the NFL, you know, more importantly, Roger Goodell gonna come in and try to flex his muscle, you know, and you know, do what he feels is necessary.
See, this is where I have to disagree here because I don't think the NFL is going to do anything. I think the NFL tried whatever they best they could to do that, and initially with this whole process, they did the best they could to get him with an indefinite suspension, and they failed at it, and they failed at it miserably. Um, I'm gonna give you a walkthrough on how this may actually go through. So let's say they basically filed an appeal. Basically, they appealed the process, and they basically take this either way through Goodell or they take it to another. They take it to another arbiter, which is basically another or possibly another federal judge. The federal judge is gonna look at them like, if you couldn't get this right through the federal judge, what makes you think you're gonna get this right through me? Another one. Basically, don't have a case to present to them, so you're not gonna look viable to them. You're not gonna look viable to them. You're not gonna present the case. Your case is basically more than likely gonna get dismissed. So you're gonna end up being stuck with 6 games. Okay, that's one. That's one scenario. Scenario two: Roger Goodell basically decides to forcibly add more games onto this. Okay, so the NFLPA goes the route of suing NFL in this case. So then it definitely goes into federal court. In the federal court process, the federal judge forcibly invokes an injunction into this case, which which means by force, Deshaun Watson gets to play week one. And this whole thing could go for months and months and months. You remember the situation that happened with Ezekiel Elliott when he had his suspension,
Oh yeah.
and he basically sat here. He sued the PA under him, sued the NFL, and he was forced to be had an injunction. So basically, he was supposed to miss the beginning of the season. He ended up playing majority of that season, but he eventually did get his suspension. But I don't remember if it happened that season or the season afterward. But he ended up playing the majority of that season anyway. But for a case this big, I wouldn't be surprised if the injunctions get slapped on. Watson ends up playing the entire season, and then the suspension doesn't get served until the following season. So I'm just looking at it like, does the NFL really want to ride this train? because it just seems like it's just a glorified massive headache. And I just don't believe that neither party wants to go through this whole headache. So I think that the NFL realizes that they presented a terrible case. Jeffrey Kessler was all in their grill and basically just did them in. And I think the NFL is just gonna have to take this L and just realize they messed up and just has to completely alter their entire policies when it comes to certain things and just you have to go from there.
Yeah, I do agree that you know, both parties want to get this behind, so they can move forward. That's why I believe like right before the hearing came out, that letter was produced at the NFL Players Union. They said that they wouldn't be, questioning Sue Robinson's judgment.
Right?
Judge Sue Robinson, excuse me.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
but I believe they did that because because they kind of they probably had an inkling of what her decision was going to be. But that changes everything if the NFL does step in and try to like I said, flex some muscle and and increase the suspension. Everything's back on the table, like a lawsuit from the players union, and like you said, this can stretch out possibly into next season.
If they go about the business, if they flex their muscle and undermine her authority, it makes your CBA look like a joke. It completely makes your CBA look like an utter joke. You undermine a federal judge. Y'all look like bullies. You do the same thing that Jerry Jones said years ago that y'all shouldn't do. Y'all basically look like judge, jury, and executioner all over again, which Jones said y'all need to stop doing in the first place. So if that's like I said, so if that's the case, why did you bring to the table? Why did you agree to your CBA to have a federal judge in this situation? Then why not just be the same thing y'all was so many years ago? Then y'all just wasted the time and signed your CBA, in my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely agree. That they the two sides compromised and agreed mutually to hire Judge Sue Robinson to make the decision.
Right.
But it will be interesting, because looking back at previous cases, I know it's a completely different CBA, but like when Ray Rice situation, I think he initially got suspended for 2 games, but then, did he correct me if I'm wrong, but did he get put on the exempt list or was he just suspended indefinitely after that tape came out?
I think he did get put on. I think he got suspended indefinitely because I don't think the exempt list didn't get put out there until later. I think he was before the exempt list.
Yeah, and see, I just think that um the NFL, Roger Goodell, he still has that power. Like that was negotiated that no matter the ruling, that he could still appeal. I guess both sides can, but he could still appeal. Like if they were true to their word and they really wanted, somebody to come in with you know, with a clear mind that's not, looking out for either side, I think they would have just said whatever the ruling is, that's what it's gonna be. But they added all these extra stipulations that if one side doesn't agree or the other side is unhappy, they can push the issue. That kind of leaves a gray area. So, it will be interesting to see within these next 2 days what exactly happens.
We're gonna figure out a lot about. We're gonna figure out whose ego is bigger in the next 2 days. But if Roger Goodell really does care about the integrity of of this new thing, he will step down and let this process play out. Like I said, I'm not saying at the end of the day, I'm not saying this on the behalf of just being a Browns fan. I'm only saying this because y'all put in the effort to try to make the CBA work. It's only right that you let this be and just go from there. That's all I'm saying. And with that, that's all the time we have for this edition of Chuck and Ruck. Tune in next time where this leads us to our predictions for the AFC North. Since now we have our suspension, do the Browns have enough to win the AFC North now? Tune in next time to find out. Until then, I am the Ruck. That is Chuck. Later, Gators.